Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me thank the Institute of Law and Public Affairs of GIMPA, as well as the Frederick Ebert Foundation for inviting me, or should I say for dragging me here to participate in the Accra Dialogue 4. You may be wondering why I'm saying dragging. I'm saying that because since I left government, I promised myself that I will not be involved in any program which may have the slightest undertones of partisan nature. But here I am being persuaded by Mr. Abe to come and attend this important function. I'm grateful to him. Ladies and gentlemen, after reading the accompanying literature, which came with my invitation, I was wondering if the invitation has not been sent to a very wrong person. The literature, in explaining the objectives of TAD, stated among other things, and I quote, "The object of the dialogue is to interrogate and harness the thoughts of leading industry experts on various thematic, topical, or pressing issues of national concern," unquote. Honestly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not an expert. The experts, I believe, are here. My contribution today is going to be based on my observations in the working of the civil service, both in government and out of government. I'm very much aware of the large volumes of literature on the civil public service of Ghana, especially on its reforms written by the real experts. And the experts continue to research on this to help the nation have an efficient civil service. The subject of our discussion today, quote, "Executing the President's mandate, the role of the civil service," unquote. This is a very topical at this time of our development, especially as we saw on the film, taking into consideration the current heated debate about the appointment of political advisors to the office of the President and some other ministries. Ladies and gentlemen, however well-meaning plans a president has on paper, the success or failure of the president is judged not by the plans, but is judged by the execution of the plans. He is assessed to be successful if the plans are executed successfully for the benefit of the citizenry. It's a failure if he makes a mess in the execution of the plans. It is that very important that as much as one should have a great mind to dream of beautiful things and ideas, it is equally important to have a cream of intelligent and hardworking staff to bring the dreams into reality. In Ghana, as is almost everywhere else, the dreamers are presidents and governments, and the executors are the civil public service. Our Constitution, the 19th Constitution, in Articles 190 and 193, make reference to the civil service. More specifically, Section 2 of the Civil Service Act, 1993, that's the PNDC Law 327, specifically states the object of the service as, quote, to assist the government in the formulation and implementation of government policies for development of the country. Section 3 further states that functions to include, quote, A, initiate and formulate policy options for the consideration of the government. B, initiate and advise on government plans. C, undertake the necessary research for the effective implementation of government policies. D, implement government policies. E, review government policies and plans. F, monitor, coordinate, and evaluate government policies and plans. G, perform functions that are incidental or conducive to the achievement of the objects specified in Section 2. And H, perform such other functions as the Civil Service Council may direct, unquote. It is obvious from this that the implementation of the President's mandate should, under normal circumstances, be the responsibility of the civil service. The question then is, ladies and gentlemen, is the civil service as presently constituted in a position to help the President implement his promises? We should not lose sight of the fact that a president is elected for a period of 4 years in the first instance. His ability to continue for another 4 years depends on his ability to fulfill most of his promises he gave to the people. With this in mind, if a president has any doubt about the civil service helping him achieving his objective, or as they say, to make things happen, he will go out of the service to recruit people to help him achieve his objectives. We should not forget that every politician's aim is to win elections. The president's term of office at most 8 years. Within this relatively short period, he had to implement his promises and leave his legacy for the nation. While the president's term of office is relatively short, the civil servant tenure is quite the opposite. It's akin to a monastic order where people enter on leaving the university and leave on retirement. Ladies and gentlemen, I have tried to establish the importance of a civil service in helping government or president achieve his objectives. So let me ask a question. Is the Ghana civil service as presently constituted in a position to help the president implement his policies? I shall be back to answer this question. But before then, let us first find out how all governments of this nation since independence have recognized the importance of a very efficient developmental civil service. This observation could be gleaned from the number of commissions set up by different governments to streamline and improve the performance of the civil service in support of the development of the country. From Nkrumah with his Africanization of the public service policy, the introduction of state-owned enterprises, and the creation of parallel quasi-government institutions, the NLC-PP with the setting up of the Mills Odoi Commission, the co-commission set up by the NRC, the PNDC with the Chairman Committee and other reform proposals under the SAP, the NDC-1, which introduced the new civil service law and also introduced the Civil Service Performance Improvement Program, the MPP with the introduction of the Ministry of Public Sector Reform and then NDC 2, which believed that these previous attempts at reforms all have not worked because they were based on the concept of top-down approach and therefore came with new proposals. Ladies and gentlemen, all these reforms efforts have been attempts to reorient the civil service to meet national development goals. Unfortunately, they have not worked very successfully. Let me try to answer the question I posed earlier about the state of our current civil service. In answering this question, I want to juxtapose it with what I read on the internet site of the Ghana Civil Service. On the broad heading, Understanding the Public Administration System, there is a subheading, Organization and Management, which also has a fine presentation outline under which you have another subheading, Understanding the Public Administration System, with a subtitle, Requirements of Public Servant. Under this, you have so many requirements, and I want to quote some of them. Quote, be loyal to the government of the day. 2, exhibit high integrity. 3, uphold the ethical standards. It continues with other requirements until it ends with another requirement, which states, quote, in all you do, be proud to be working in the civil service of Ghana, where we aim at providing quality professional service to ensure an effective policy management for national development. The part of this part of the nation statements is really interesting. It is great to be proud of the institution in which you work, but are they really providing quality professional service? Even though we've been told that reforms since 1957 have not been successful, but compared to 1960s and 70s, the civil service as it is today, or as it was in the not too distant past, is in a sorry state. This is my observation after being associated with the service in one way or other since 1966. But do we have to blame the practitioners alone for this state of affairs? To me, the answer is a big no. Let's take one critical cardinal principle of any good civil service: political neutrality and efficiency. My experience tells me the civil service is neither politically neutral nor efficient. Neutrality does not mean that members should not have political opinion. After all, they vote. Ladies and gentlemen, even the Electoral Commission members who supervise elections also vote. And therefore, they may have interest in one party or the other. But the civil servant is hounded because he is alleged to be a political animal aligned to A or B. The political neutrality in our civil service has been destroyed by us, the politicians. And when I say politicians, I mean both civil and military politicians. There have been too many dismissals in the service on the very wrong assumption of belonging to the other side. Such dismissals result at times in promoting juniors over seniors to head departments. These actions lead to fear and low morale in the service. Is it therefore any wonder that the service is not performing to our satisfaction? Ladies and gentlemen, let me give you two typical examples of people in public service who have to lose their job because they were alleged to be aligned to a party A or party B. The first one was the head of VRA. Here was a gentleman who has worked all his life in VRA. There was the vacancy because the head retired. The board of VRA interviewed people and recommended 3 people to the president for appointment. And our preference was Mr. A. I don't want to give names. The president invited this gentleman, spoke with him, and thought he was right, and therefore was appointed the chief executive of VRA sometime, I think, in 2007. Unfortunately for this man, there was a change of government in 2009, and he was supposed to be for the other side because he was appointed by the then president. Forgetting that in Ghana, all these appointments are made by a president. The second one, also a gentleman who worked at the Ghana Water Company. He had been recommended by his board to be made the managing director after the retirement of the then managing director. The proposal went to the president. I was part of this, so I know what really happened. There was hue and cry petitions to the president that the man must not be appointed because he was an NDC. And this came from my own people. The pressure was so much that the president called me and asked me to find out about this gentleman. So I called my colleagues and said, could you help me determine who this gentleman is? Come and tell me anything you hear about him. The next day they came and said, this is the gentleman who is working in Ghana Water Company as a deputy managing director. So I said, stop, don't do any more research on him. So I went back to my boss and said, Mr. President, this gentleman, I understand, works at Ghana Water Company as the deputy managing director. Even if he's not appointed the managing director, he is still going to work there as a deputy managing director. And if the managing director is that way, I believe the deputy will act in his place. Unless we are saying because he does not belong to us, and therefore he should lose his job as a deputy managing director. And anyway, Mr. President, the board which recommended him was a board set up by you. So the gentleman was lucky, and I was asked to inform the water company that they should give him the post. He was not a very lucky gentleman. 1.5 years after giving the post, there was a change of government. And he was tagged NPP and therefore removed from office. This is the situation we find many of civil servants. In such a situation, okay. I've been told I have 2 minutes, but I actually maybe I have more time than the 2 minutes, so maybe I'll speed up. And so this is the situation we find ourselves as a nation. Let's look at efficiency and training of the civil service again. Some years back, one cannot leave the university and enter the civil service. Before doing that, you have to attend GIMPA to understand the rudiments of how civil service works. This, I believe, is not there again. Don't let's forget that GIMPA stands for Ghana Institute of Management and Public Administration. So it was set up purposely to train public servants. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore. I don't know what it's doing now. Fortunately, we have Professor Adair here, and therefore maybe he'll be able to let us know how they are still training civil servants. But I must confess, I was part of the group which changed it into the situation it is now. Protest by civil servants against people being appointed from outside the village is not new in Ghana. And even in foreign countries, in places like UK, it's done. Civil servants always want to protect their own, and they just do not like people coming in to work there. I remember in 1969 when Professor Buzia came in, the then Minister of Finance and Economic Planning, Mr. J.H. Mensah, decided to bring in some gentlemen. And there was a hell of a protest that they are coming to supplant some people on them. These people were the late Dr. Amonikwe, the late Baswa, Mr. Mpiani, and Dr. Donko Kwadwo. But the minister persisted, and they were allowed to stay on. Ladies and gentlemen, let me then talk briefly on people who come from outside the civil service. This is something we cannot run away from. Every president will appoint people from outside the civil service to come and help the president. He will have to gather people around him who share his opinion. Don't let us forget that a president is not a superhuman, and she doesn't know everything. And the presidency has not been set up like a normal ministry, where at the ministry you have all sorts of officials, technical people advising the minister. The civil service you have at the office of president, they are basically administrators. But you have all the ministers and everything coming to the president. A president who is not a superhuman, how does he look at all these things and take decisions on these issues? Definitely you should have people around him, people he trusts, who can help him to determine and look at the issues coming to enable him take decisions for the benefit of the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's disabuse our minds about people who are coming in to work at the office of the president. It will go on, and I support that it should continue to go on. The most important thing is the balance, to make sure that you bring in people who understand what you're saying, and not too many people show to give an appearance of that trying to give job for the boys. Finally, let me end by making some recommendations on how a president should be able to have his program implemented. The first place to look at, especially, is the civil service. Even if a president decides to bring in only advisors from outside, these advisors need the civil service to help them to perform very well. And therefore, it's very, very important for us to have a very, very efficient civil service. A civil service which is politically neutral. A civil service where people will be free to give their ideas to the without fearing that they will be dismissed because they are alleged or supposed to be belonging to the other side. If we do that, I think we'll be doing something for the country. Also, that we must allow the president also to bring in the people he believes will help him in his management of the affairs of the state. Maybe what we should think of is capping the number of people the president may want to bring in. Let's look at what happens in the US, where whenever a new president comes in, everybody knows the number of appointments the president is going to make. Maybe we should learn from this and decide whether we want to do it or not. For example, we may decide to say that the president should come in with his own chief directors. And if we're able to, if we do this and agree to have something like that, I think it will go a long way in helping us in our development. Thank you so much.
You can talk.